Misty. 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 Oh, this video is going to be about treats. I have this container for when they're in the living room playing and I can give them some treats. I don't give them that many treats, and mostly I feed my rats lab blocks, because if I feed them seed mixes, they'll just eat the fun stuff and leave the healthy stuff. These are peanut butter dog biscuits, and they have a little bit of protein in them, but not too much, and the ingredients are like peanut butter and grains and molasses, and it's all pretty much the same as lab blocks, but I wouldn't feed them as an everyday food, but as a treat. They can easily be broken into pieces if they're too big, but Buttons will carry it around like a little dog bone. It's so cute. They've got, like, the protein that's in them comes from plants, because it's got peanut butter and other things in it, so it's not like animal protein, which rats will eat animal protein, and I feed Buttons fish sticks sometimes because she loves them, so it's maybe not the best thing for them, but it won't really kill them. But when you're going to feed them something a lot of, you try to look for a treat that doesn't have that much protein. And I actually find that a lot of dog treats have a lot more grains in them than cat treats, because cats eat more protein. Anyway, so these peanut butter dog treats they really like. This is a piece of a big, huge, round rice cake that I got at a store. They pop them in a machine in the store. I think they're called Cocoa Puffs or whatever, but that sounds like a breakfast cereal, but they're some kind of puffed something or other. And they've got rice and grains in them, but a whole big sheet is only 16 calories, and I break them into tiny pieces even smaller than this. So they're like basically crunchy air. I wouldn't feed them too much of them because they're so devoid of nutrition that if they were only eating these, they wouldn't be getting enough stuff. But they do seem to really like them, and it's a good filler to stop them from overeating. And these are another kind of soft dog treat. They're bacon cheddar flavored, so they have a lot more protein, a little bit more protein than the other ones, but this I would only feed as a very, very sparing treat, because they are animal protein versus the other ones being, you know, from plants. So it's a very, very sparing treat, cheese and bacon, but again, I feed them table scraps, and I basically feed them anything they'll take in small amounts, you know. It might not be the healthiest, but my rats are pretty healthy. Misty's a really picky eater, but Buttons will eat basically anything, and she hasn't seemed to have any health problems because of it, so. And these are soft, so you could easily break them into tiny, tiny treats, and they really, really like them. So they're good for training them when you only want to give them a tiny, tiny piece so that they don't get full and they actually pay attention. So they're good training treats. And the main treat I give them most of the time, if I can find one in here to show you. Well, basically it's just Cheerios. They all sunk down to the bottom and now I can't find them. We buy a cheap brand of Cheerios. They're not actual Cheerios, but we get like the multigrain ones, but the unsweetened. We try to look for ones that don't have any sugar. And I usually taste them, and if they taste sweet, then I don't give it to them because I don't want them to get like addicted to the sugar. So any kind of whole grain oat cereal. Another thing we've used in the past is Triscuits. Break them up into tiny pieces because those are just whole grains, and you get the reduced fat kind. And you can actually find them unsalted, which is good because rats shouldn't have too much salt in their diet. And a really good treat I found is I take big sheets of flatbread that you would use for wrapping up a wrap, or dipping in hummus or whatever, and I just toast them in the toaster and then break them into tiny pieces. And I break them smaller than that when I feed them, and then they're dry so they can be shelf stable, but it's just bread. And I look at the ingredients on and make sure it doesn't have anything bad in it. So if it's just basically grains and it's healthy and it's so this kind of bread is, I guess, healthier than fluffy white bread, which isn't really good for people, much less rats. So those are basically some of the treats I use for training and giving treats. And I give them a lot of treats when they're in the living room playing, just because it keeps them active and interested in play, but I try not to give them too many. Most of the time for treats we give them vegetables, and they seem to really like that. In their cage they get celery, and they get baby spinach leaves, and they get lettuce. We try not to give them too much iceberg lettuce because that doesn't have very much nutrition in it. It's not even really good for people. And with iceberg lettuce, if you feed them too much, it can make their poop kind of soft. But romaine lettuce and spinach and all kinds of greens and green pepper. Every time we have an apple core, we put it in the rat cage, and Misty likes to pull the seeds out and eat the apple seeds. So it's a fun enrichment thing. But most of their main diet is the lab blocks, and Buttons will eat them. Misty will if she absolutely has to, but she doesn't really eat them, so we try to make sure they get a variety of other things. So if they're not eating their lab blocks, they can at least eat other things. But it's what's worked for us, and they seem to be healthy. But I'm not an expert, and I know there's a lot of people that make complicated diets for their rats and go through the work and cook for their animals and stuff. I'm not that kind of a person. I believe that the lab blocks have everything they need, and if we feed them too many treats, they just won't eat them. But if we feed them a mix, they'll just pick out the stuff they like and not eat the rest. When we bought that little cage there, it came with hamster food, and so we would feed it to them as a treat, and they would eat all the big puffy crunchy bits and leave behind all the small pellets. So that's probably what they would do if we fed them a rat seed mix. So we have a big bag of rat seed, but we use that as a treat, not as their main diet. So they like these treats that have pizza dough on the outside, and then they're stuffed with some kind of green stuff. They look kind of like combos, which is a people's snack food. I don't even remember what they're called. And then they also like pretzel treats and stuff, but we don't buy that many of those because you can get better nutrition and much cheaper prices by just buying people food and stuff and feeding them that. So they also really enjoy cheesy chews. They'll chew them down to nothing. And we had found these dog bones that actually had very tiny bit of protein in it. It was mostly carb stuff in it. I can't remember the exact ingredients, but it seemed to be, they were bacon and cheese flavor or chicken flavor, and they really, really loved them, and they would chew them down until all that was left was the plastic core, because they were the edible kind of bones, and they were called marrow chews, but they didn't really have very much protein in them. They probably wouldn't be a very good treat for a dog, because they didn't have, very good dog nutrition, but they had, that's my mom's cell phone, but they did have okay nutrition for rats. So they used to really like them, but now they don't make them anymore, so maybe you can get them where you live. Okay, so this has been my video about treats, and see you next video.